This is the Global GoalsCast, the podcast that explores, can we change the world? I'm really pleased to be joined by Cathy Engelbert. Thanks very much for coming along.
It's great to be here in Davos.
CEO of Deloitte. And actually, when you became the CEO, you became the first woman to be a CEO of a Big Four firm.
Yes.
And at the time, the Wall Street Journal said you were cracking the glass ceiling. How does that feel?
Yeah, so I've gotten used to it now, but I talk about how we need to move these elevations of women into key roles from novelty to norm. So that would be nice if we didn't have to shout it out as the first this or that. So I think it's really important to focus on that. I actually thought it was a big deal to me personally to get this role. What I didn't realize is what a big deal it was outside the firm for me to get this role. So I've gotten handwritten letters from CEOs to college students to deans of business schools to grandfathers of grandkids in schools. You know, people say, "Yeah, Cathy," because they want you to give them a job. So, but it's been fabulous. I mean, it's great to show that women can be leaders of big companies.
It's not easy, however, and you've made a point to continue to be a mother as well as a CEO. Now, that shouldn't be hard, but tell me about how that is a struggle or not.
Yeah, so I'm the mother of two children, one in college and then one a boy who's a junior in high school. And so there's no doubt it's a struggle, but like I tell all of our young men and women, it's not linear. It changes over time. What my kids needed from me when they were toddlers is very different than today when they don't even look at me when I come in the door. So, but it is really important to be a role model and to share stories about how it works and how sometimes it doesn't work. And then learn from when it doesn't work how you can adjust.
And so you've also changed Deloitte's leave policy.
Yes.
That happened in September
Of
2016.
yes.
So
Yep.
we've had a while. How has
Yes.
it gone, and how has that affected the retention rate?
So our family leave program, we think, is industry leading, 16 weeks for men and women, not just for parental leave, but for any family matter. So what I didn't realize when we put it in, and again, we had some resistance about the cost of it, but we weren't considering necessarily, because it's hard to quantify the benefits of not having to retrain when people leave because they don't think they can make a career with you. So it's been amazingly positive. Our people are fired up. The best email I got was from a man who said, "I hope I never have to use it for a sick parent or sick child, but it gives me peace of mind to know it's there." And, you know, so many people have said, "Oh, I had to take 11 weeks off. My mom was dying, and I was able to be there with her in her last days." And those are all worth it to me, you know, that we did something that was right for our people, because our people are our R&D. You know, you think about a people business, and, you know, I have a long history with the pharmaceutical industry, and they have R&D. They're trying to find the next cure for cancer or an unmet medical need. Well, I figured out our R&D is our people, so no matter what it cost, I said, this is the right thing to do for our people. So it's been great, as you can imagine, a real differentiator for us in the talent market, which is, you know, a war for talent, and people really just feel, I think, more energized that they feel they can have a career with us because we're going to give them the time off that they, especially in the time of need.
So time of need is one thing, but what about the day-to-day flexibility that a lot of people seek, whether they are a mother or a father or someone caring for someone at home? It's hard work being a consultant. I've got a lot of friends who
Yes.
are consultants, and quite often they're working late in the night. But how do you balance that with this need to have a more flexible life?
Yeah, I think as you look at, especially we're over 60% millennial at Deloitte, and you look at the life cycle of an employee, if we hire a lot of young, you know, bright business students and engineers, and we try to give them a look at the long-term career at Deloitte where they can feel entrepreneurial. They can do something we've dubbed the culture of courage, and we didn't define it on purpose so that they could define it, whether they want to feel entrepreneurial and courageous, whether they want it to be around inclusion and they feel courageous. So that's kind of been a big hit to, you know, yes, everybody works hard. Yes, we're driving a high-performance culture. Yes, it's not always perfect, and it is hard. But if they feel that the firm is supporting them with things like family leave, with things like student loan consolidation or a fitness subsidy, and well-being has been a big part of our messaging, because we've now developed an in-house app where we can monitor the number of flights, the number of hours, the workload, the burnout, and, you know, really just be able to evaluate better with data what the strain is on our people. So our people see that and they know we care. So that's part of it. It's not always perfect. We do work very hard.
So you mentioned developing an app to monitor how people are doing. Now, this whole world of artificial intelligence and monitoring is obviously a big challenge for the consulting industry. Tell me how that fits into the work at Deloitte and the changing role of a consultant.
Yeah, so it's a great topic for being here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, because one of the big topics of conversation is AI, robots, blockchain, and the whole future of work. And I actually flip it and I call it the work of the future, because the future of work sounds like there might not be any. But the work of the future sounds like we might be able to shape it a little bit and determine. And one change I've seen since last year here, conversation was about like human versus machine. Now it's human with machine, and how we, over time, especially in our consulting and in all of our business, tax and audit, we're looking at a different way of thinking about our talent. We're thinking about how we upskill, reskill, how we don't all need to be STEM fluent, but we need to all be tech savvy. And that's different. And so if you think about, again, investing in your people that way and talent, but there's no doubt AI is changing some things we used to do manually. Less hours are required, but now we're giving our people higher skilled, higher judgment items that they like better doing. We're now piloting using drones in our audit business. Now we have drone operators instead of people who had clipboards and had to go out and count inventory. In consulting, we're digitizing the entire firm. Which actually, I think there's a lot of opportunity. So I'm actually an optimist on this. I realize there's the robot apocalypse out there and everybody's worried, but I'm more optimistic because I look at things like a data scientist. 5 years ago, we had a few. We weren't hiring a lot. Now we can't hire enough of them, and they're really the old statistician. But the machine took care of the math now that the statistician would do, and now these data scientists are communicators, technology integrators, advisors to our clients. So really, it's about sensing these shifts and the shift to a new way of thinking about the work of the future. And I'm, again, optimistic, but some people aren't going to change, and that's where we got to make sure a big swath of our population does not get left behind as we see the fourth industrial revolution, which obviously the World Economic Forum is all about, change and shift the way we work. So I always ask 3 questions. How are we working? Where are we working? And what technology are we using? I tell clients, you got to think about your human capital as much as you think about your financial capital. And that's how we're approaching it. And when you do that, think about that. A CFO would look at financial capital so closely, and every dollar gets accounted for and allocated. Well, think about your human capital. So if you're going to put in bots, think, how does that impact my human capital across, the dimensions of what they're doing? And then, from there, I think it actually gets some clarity on your strategy.
So fear not the bot is
fear
what I'm hearing.
The bot.
What I'm hearing from you.
And a quick story about my son. So
Yes.
when he was 15 a year ago, he came to me and he said, Mom, and this is a kid, Xbox and baseball and soccer, and that's about it. And he came to me and said, Mom, I'm afraid my job's going to get taken over by a robot someday. And I actually was pretty impressed that he actually asked a cool question like that. So I went into my I've never met a machine with empathy and courage, and we still need the human element and human skills. And he debated me, which is tough
Nice.
with a 15-year-old.
With a 15-year-old,
And
yeah.
then he just said, well, I guess I'm going to have to learn to be a cobot. And I said, cobot? What's a cobot? And he said, coexist with a robot. So that's where I got this human versus machine, with human with machine cobot. I said, he's right. We all need to learn to be cobots. So I think the fear repeats itself, and we've had fear in all of our industrial revolutions. And I think this one will be different because of the speed and exponential technologies. But I also think the most automated companies are creating the most jobs. And the jobs they're creating, for the most part, are better jobs than the ones before.
I'm interested in this idea of how technology literate people need to be. And there definitely in the United States seems to be not enough people coming out with computer science degrees for the number of jobs that are available.
Yeah, so there is a big mismatch, and I've talked a lot about studied research that's this mismatch. I hear CEOs say, there's 6 million jobs open and we can't fill them, we can't fill welders and technical competencies and things like computer engineers. But I am a believer that we do need, when you look at computer coders, that's only about 10 to 12% of our population. And we don't need 90% more. So not everybody needs to be a STEM major. I'm very focused on STEM, especially women in STEM. But also, I think if you're an arts major, I always tell parents of arts majors, don't worry, because as long as your kid is curious about learning about tech, becoming tech savvy, they don't need to be fluent, they need to be savvy. Because even some of our tech fluent people are so fluent in a specific technology, but not the broad technology. Like cloud is something that's emerged very fast and furious and that we're all investing heavily in. And so that's something everyone needs to be savvy about what the cloud's all about. Blockchain, another area. People need to learn about blockchain and how that will be deployed in companies to be in order to serve them. So we're doing a lot. But to the people that may be left behind, I do worry about we are going to have some short-term challenges, I believe, which we've already had, as you see, in certain parts of this country. Where there does seem to be a divide. And I do worry about that. So I know the Business Roundtable, for instance, Wes Bush from Northrop is heading up an effort around the Education and Workforce Committee around some very interesting initiatives where you don't have to get that 4-year degree. And the challenge is always scaling any effort. So there's a lot of companies doing a lot of great things to reskill, upskill, or to take high school plus 2 years of a technical college and make that a curriculum together. So I think there's some hope. How do you scale it across thousands, if not millions? That's the challenge for us.
You mentioned the blockchain, and it's, I think, probably the biggest buzzword in Davos this year. Somebody told me I think I've reached peak crypto. It's all up and down the promenade inside the
Yes.
Congress Center. And it does present a challenge when it finally gets some traction in consulting, in tax, in audit.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how you see that developing.
Yeah, so we already see use cases developing, and I think until these use cases that companies are in deploying blockchain in their processes, until those kind of play out, it's hard to talk about it because it's a conceptual. And again, people are confused because of the Bitcoin and crypto craze that's going on. They're confused that, oh, well, that's blockchain, so I'm not going to pay attention to it because I'm hearing all these things about the volatility in the value of these cryptocurrencies. You know, blockchain is
set that aside.
Yeah, set that aside.
Blockchain is
Distributed
something
ledger, a
different.
technology happens to underline crypto, but it's a technology that companies are absolutely going to deploying today, trying to figure out. I don't think anyone's totally figured out exactly how to use it. We're trying to figure out, would we audit the blockchain? There are issues about cyber around the blockchain, as there are issues with any new technology around privacy, confidentiality, and those kind of things. So lots to think about, lots emerging. I think when these use cases play out, and it'll become more mainstream, so probably within 18 months to 2 years, we won't be even talking about it as some new, shiny new tool or technology. It'll become pretty mainstream, especially in the financial services sector. I think other industries and sectors are trying to figure out, what it means for them. So lots, like you said, lots of buzz, lots of discussion. But I do think, 2 years, 3 years from now, we'll be saying, I can't believe we didn't really understand it back in 2018.
Do you think it has the possibility to do good? I've been thinking about and looking at land registry, for example, and how the blockchain could help countries where it's very difficult to make sure somebody knows who owns that piece of land.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of applications like the one you bring up where you need a trusted chain of information, of data, of, again, protected information that can't be
Screwed around
altered.
with. Yeah.
And that's why it's so important in the capital markets that this will play an important role, and I think it'll actually improve the not just the quality, but also the trust that you'll have in that information. But it will take out some other processes that for a long time, like in real estate, you spend a lot of money, paying for title searches and things like that, and it could actually really disrupt certain processes within industries. And that's, again, something to watch, and I think the companies who see the disruption coming will, again, respond, and I think it'll just get, again, replaced by something else, deploy their capital elsewhere.
So you've been looking this year on repositioning Deloitte, and Deloitte already serves about 80% of the Fortune 500.
Yes.
And you've been looking at being an innovation catalyst. And with that, you've established a number of strategic partners, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and HP.
Yes.
So what is that about? Is that reaching out where you don't have expertise? What do those partnerships bring to Deloitte?
Yeah, I think it's clear, and I said this last year at the World Economic Forum, no one company can do it alone in this fast-paced fourth industrial revolution. So it's clear that participating in your ecosystem, and in fact, some of it's with competimates or co-opetition, I call it, where you're partnering even with someone you compete with, or you're partnering with someone like an Apple or Google to figure out. So we're obviously really good serving our clients, have great relationships with clients. Apple's been really good on the consumer side. The question is, could you merge an effort where we could bring, Apple products into the workplace, untether people from factory floors, change supply chains because you're using technology in a different way. So whether it's any of the big tech companies, we also partner with emerging growth companies. So there's a whole ecosystem where we think about it. Now in the talent space, there's a huge ecosystem emerging because of open talent networks. So you have to look at and participate in these ecosystems. And it's not necessarily to say, oh, you're trying to fill a gap, but you're trying to actually maximize a strength by using, again, a tech firm's technology and bringing it into your client to build what I call tech-enabled solutions, because everyone wants a solution. They want it to be tech-enabled. So we have to partner. And we have long partnerships with big technology providers. Some of the ones you read are our more recent ones, but cloud's another one because of AWS and Azure and Google. Very important to be in that game, because as everyone migrates to the cloud, that's something that, obviously if we didn't invest in it, we would look back 5 years from now and say, we missed a shift. So the hardest part of being a CEO today, I think, is there's so many shifts going on. We mentioned two of them here, blockchain and cloud, but there's so many others. AI, cognitive, social, mobile, Internet of Things, connected cities, nations, cars. Where do you deploy your capital? What choices do you make? What impact do you want to have? Then you have to bring in the fact with a 62% millennial workforce, all our people want purpose-driven in everything we do. And you got to take care of well-being. So it's a fascinating time to be a leader and make these choices and how, again, you allocate not only your human capital, your financial capital, but your own time as a CEO.
So I can understand it with the cloud. I can understand it, your connections with Apple, but I'm struggling with social. And tell me how social and consulting, how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, if you think it's more around, a lot of companies are, transforming, they're doing their digital transformation. Part of their digital transformation is social media. Part of it's looking at how they have this relentless focus on their customer and taking the friction out. And the favorite term of a millennial, 5 words, is there an app for that? So, think about that. And so if our clients have this relentless focus on their customer, and the customer's looking to take the friction out, use social media as a way to sell, use the Internet of Things, all of this, again, across a platform is so important to make sure that we're investing in, we're involved in, we know how to drive strategy. We bought, so we've got digital strategy, digital technology, and we bought a little boutique firm in San Francisco called Heat, great creative digital marketing agency. Again, that was to give us more of an end-to-end digital platform, and Heat does a lot of building social media strategy for companies as well as the creative, advertising side. So again, it's just, if a client comes in, clients used to buying consulting point solutions, like I just want to solve this problem. Now they're saying, I need to actually transform. So you're really solving problems across a platform. And that's what jobs are becoming, platforms too. So it's actually a perfect time for consulting to thrive.
So thinking about what advice you'd give to CEOs in terms of some of the issues related to the global goals, diversity, pay equity, what are the kind of best practices that you've seen really work that you would also recommend?
Yeah, so the first thing I recommend is especially on the diversity inclusion front, you need to sense, the nature of your workforce. So we've looked at our BRGs, we've looked at obviously all
What's
of our...
What's a BRG?
A business resource group, like an employee, some people call it ERG. So these are cohort groups, diverse cohort groups. So you'll have your African American cohort group, your LGBT cohort group, your women, initiative cohort group, which we started back in 1993. And so now what we're finding with our talent is they may not want to just be part of one cohort group because they know to affect change and make an impact. So as women, we need men to be part of the conversation. As an underrepresented minority, you need everybody else to help sponsor you and mentor you to get to the next level of your career goals. So on diversity inclusion, a lot of CEOs ask me as a female CEO, how did you do it? How you guys are known for, obviously advancing women and your talent complex. So that one, a lot of great ideas have come up. We're still not where we need to be. I see some optimism in the layer below CEO. We only track percentage of females at CEO, not the rest of the C-suite, and I see a lot of potential there. But we have to continue to drive programs and policies within our companies. So that's the first thing. As it relates to sustainability, really important. CEOs obviously have focused on it because it's become their stakeholders' interests, shareholders. And so I think when you look at the SDGs, for instance, I mean, it's important to have not just, again, one program for each, but, can you look at it over a cycle of, it's not just looking at one element of this. So we can't just look at talent. We can't just look at diversity. We can't just look at, our robots taking over. We can't just look at sustainability. What should our investments be globally outside the U.S.? Why is populism where it is? And how do we change the world? So there's a lot of things that CEOs can think about, but it's going to come down again to the way they think about their financial capital versus their human capital. And human capital is going to drive you to more of these SDG goals.
And I'm interested in any advice that you would have given yourself starting out. What's the one thing you wish you'd known?
That your career is not linear. It changes. That you need to raise your hand and have confidence and take risks. Now, I look back now and I look at points of time where I did raise my hand. I might not even knew I was. But also, when you don't want to do something, you have to have the yes or what you want to do right behind it. So I've got offered things where I said no, and I got the best advice from a mentor I ever got. If you're going to say no, have the yes behind it, because the leader that thinks of you for positions wants to know you're helping solve another problem they might have. And so it was the best advice I ever got. So I then subsequently, when I said no to 2 other assignments, I said, I don't want that, but here's something I think I'm highly qualified for. And women don't, especially women, don't do that often. They think they have to have 10 out of 10 of the attributes to raise their hand and take on an assignment, whereas men, it's probably 2 out of 10. I'm making that up, but there's probably some good research on that. And so I wish I'd known more about when to raise my hand, how much confidence I could have in myself and my abilities. And so I share my story a lot about failures I had, because we learn so much more from our failures than our successes.
And in terms of pay equity at Deloitte, how close are you?
Yeah, so we have no issue. The first thing I advise CEOs on that issue, because they ask a lot, is you have to deploy your advanced analytics and look at it across all your employee cohort groups. And when you do that, you can see any gaps pretty quickly. So there's so much advanced technology out there to do that. So we're very, very happy to report. So we are right where we want to be. We study it. We use the advanced analytics. The thing that we're focused on is, experienced hires that come into the firm. There is not necessarily a pay gap once they're in the firm, but they may come in because women haven't raised their hand maybe and haven't built their capability and gotten to the next level coming in, versus a man who's done a lot more and maybe they come in at a higher pay point. So we're looking at different, small cohort groups within the organization, but you have to deploy those advanced analytics. There's so much potential in those. And again, 5 years, we weren't doing any of that. Now we're able to every performance management cycle, and we've actually done a lot on performance management to reimagine it and really what I'll call modernize it, so that we don't have disparity in even the way we think of levels. We took ratings out for our people, which was pretty bold. What happened? We actually have more data on our people because it's more qualitative, which is what it should be when you're running an organization where you want to develop people. So we're pretty proud of the journey we've been on to reimagine our whole performance management system.
And how's the diversity in the board now?
Yeah, we have great. We're 40%, women on our board. Again, we're a private board, so it doesn't go into all the numbers that come out on the 30% club, et cetera. But we're doing very well. Again, underrepresented minorities are a challenge for us because coming into our workforce is where the numbers aren't where they. So when we had our women's issue back in 1993, 50% of who we were hiring were women. And less than 10% were making it to the top, if you thought the top was being admitted as a partner. Different problem with our underrepresented minority population when you bring in such a small number of them, because the colleges we recruit, they don't have the number. There's a war for great talent in that space. So trying to think of different ways of getting into, again, technical schools, community colleges, and other places to bring talent in and then skill them and develop them into the next generation of leaders. It's tough for everybody, but we need to focus on it.
Cathy, thank you very, very much for joining us here on the Global GoalsCast.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.